Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. We do the show each and every single Monday, so if you like that, hopefully you'll stick around. This first news story, there's a lot of really interesting news stories on today's show. So this first news story, Jakeem Grant signs an extension. This news comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins to sign Jakeem Grant to an extension. The Dolphins have agreed to a 4-year contract extension with the wide receiver Jakeem Grant, a source tells Adam Beasley of the Miami Herald. The deal will keep Grant under the club through the 2023 season. The fresh deal will be worth up to $24 million, a source tells the internet report of NFL.com. That means Grant will make just $6 million a year despite having only 34 career catches for 471 yards across 3 seasons. Grant is, at best, the number 4 receiver on Miami's depth chart at the moment, but most of his value comes from his return ability. The 2016 6th-rounder has returned 59 punts and 58 kickoffs over his first 3 seasons in the league, and he took a punt and kickoff to the house last year. The 16.3 yards per return provided across 14 returns in 2018 is a stellar mark, as was his 29.7 yards per return average on kickoffs. Alright, so yeah, we all know about Jakeem Grant. He's not just a kickoff returner. I feel like in this offense, he's going to be utilized very well, especially in the slot, catching screens. He's the perfect New England receiver, small, quick, great after the catch, and can get open with his route running. So he's the perfect fit for this offense. I'm very excited to see what he can do within this offense, and not just on special teams, because we know what he can do on special teams. He's a difference maker in that area of the field. He was last year. Unfortunately, got injured. I think he would have had a bigger impact in the receiving game if it wasn't for his. I think he also hurt his hip, right? Or was it his? Just like Albert, I can't remember what exactly Jakeem Grant's injury was, but unfortunately, he did get injured, and people forget how injured that receiver core was last year, because it got pretty dark towards the end of the year. But, you know, he's a great player. I really very excited for his future with the team, especially with Chad here now, Chad O'Shea, our offensive coordinator, and him being in the New England offense. Should be very fun to watch him make people miss in the open field, because he's going to be doing that a lot in this offense. So, obviously, I like the signing. I don't really see any reason to hate it. This next news story, let's see here, we'll do this one. Dolphins shopping Kiko Alonso / Rashad Jones. Now, there's 2 news stories connected to one, so stick with me. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Again, Dolphins shopping Kiko Alonso and safety Rashad Jones. The midst of a rebuild, which we're not, use that term very lightly, because you can interpret that in many different ways. I don't think we're going to be a bad team. I really don't. The Dolphins are shopping some of their older players. Barry Jackson and Adam Beasley of the Miami Herald report that Miami has dangled several of their veterans in trade talks. However, one of the players who hasn't been shopped is offensive tackle Laremy Tunsil. Earlier today, Pro Football Network reported via Twitter that the Dolphins were shopping the 25-year-old, but Jackson and Beasley writes the organization has assured Laremy Tunsil and his camp that there is no truth to that. Jackson and Beasley note that the front office has received calls about Tunsil. No duh. But the team hasn't acted on any of the offers. Further, the reporters write that they personally received a call from a credible source who said Tunsil's name had come up in trade discussions, but it was uncertain whether the Dolphins took calls on that or took the deal seriously. But that's a weird. I believe the report that there's no way Laremy is going to be traded. All right, so let's move on to this next news story, which connects to this one. Dolphins tell. This comes from Pro Football Sports, NBCSports.com. This is where this report comes from. Dolphins tell Rashad Jones he won't be traded. Safety Rashad Jones apparently won't be one of the few rumored to be traded. Jones told Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald that he received that word from management that he wasn't going anywhere. They said I won't be traded this year. The 31-year-old Jones is still a quality starter, and trading him would leave a $4 million dead money hit. He has $11 million guaranteed base salary this year, which probably means it won't be hard to get anything resembling his actual value in a trade. they're deep at safety, but Jones said he's prepared to do what is asked for him to do in this defense. So yeah, so the other ones that are rumored in the trade, and we've got another story that kind of connects to this in terms of veterans that are no longer rumored to no longer be on the Dolphins in the near future. When you look at Kiko Alonso or Kenny Stills, who still haven't, there's no word on those two being out of trade talks or whatever. So I do believe that they're probably up for trade, or at least actively being shopped. I think there's probably truth to that, but the fact that Laramie has been shot down, that he's not going to be traded, which doesn't, obviously, if we traded Laramie Tunsil, then the season would definitely be over. But why you would trade a 25-year-old who's one of the best tackles in the league is beyond me. There's no reason to do that. There's literally no, we already have enough draft capital next year. We don't need more, picks, in my opinion, because he is a very good player, and that's what you're looking for in the draft. So to get rid of him, I think, would just be foolish. Should just be more backwards than anything, in my opinion. So that's good news. Obviously, Rashad, and I'm glad that we're keeping Rashad, especially with some of the news that we're going to be talking about later in the show. I think what we did in terms of some of the moves we made in terms of roster really is going to make the lineup a lot easier, and it should make it better, in my opinion. Now, Kiko Alonso, I feel as though he's obviously a very productive middle linebacker. Where he fits in the scheme is kind of unclear. He is nowhere near as versatile. At least Sam McGuavin has shown in preseason that he's very versatile. He's great in the tackle box, and he's great in coverage. So he's shown that in preseason. He hasn't shown that in the regular season yet. But against starting caliber players, against first-team offenses, Sam has been a dominant linebacker. A very dominant linebacker. So, Kiko Alonso, and you got Raekwon McMillan, who are not edge guys. And I don't think they could play, especially Kiko. I definitely don't think he could play the edge. You got to figure out who's playing where. And it seems as though Kiko probably will be the odd man out. So I think that's probably a very real reality, that Kiko might not be a Dolphin for very much longer. And Kenny Stills is one that I'm 50-50 on. I really don't know what's going to happen with Kenny Stills. Brian Flores came out and said he hasn't been playing very well in practice, and he expects more out of him, and he's got all this off the field stuff that he's dealing with right now, and it wouldn't surprise me that he would be traded, and we can definitely replace what he gives us. I feel like when you look at Kenny Stills as a receiver, he's a very good receiver. I think he's a very good receiver. He's not very good at run after the catch, but he's a very good receiver. He can run good routes. I think he's got better hands than people think, and I think he's just a good receiver. He's definitely, I think, one of the better twos in the National Football League. But what he does give you is the ability to take the top off of a defense, and I feel like we have two receivers in house right now that can do that. When you talk about Albert and Jakeem Grant, so we wouldn't be losing a ton in terms of physical or schematic, really, on the field. If Kenny were to go, it wouldn't be that big of a loss. So it wouldn't surprise me if Kenny was no longer a Dolphin in the near future. So yeah, there you go. To wrap it all up, the Dolphins reportedly are shopping Kiko Alonso and Kenny Stills. There are also reports about Rashad Jones and Laramie Tunsil, but those reports have been shot down and have been said to not be true. So the only ones that haven't been are Kenny Stills and Kiko Alonso, which I would not expect either one of them to be on the team by week 1. I feel like Kenny has a way better chance, but Kiko is the one that I could see happening. Okay, so this next news story kind of ties into this. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins release safety TJ McDonald. Surprising news out of Miami as the Dolphins announced on Twitter that they are releasing veteran safety TJ McDonald. TJ McDonald. The move came as a surprise to most writers covering the team, and they won't save a ton of money by cutting it. McDonald still had $3 million on his $5 million salary guaranteed for this season. Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald tweet said they added $4 million in dead cap space while saving just $1 million in cap space. Last we heard, McDonald had been receiving starter reps in training camp. It's been widely speculated that the Dolphins were heading for a split with safety Rashad Jones, although this move might suggest that Jones is safe. We heard just yesterday that Jones was being shopped in trade talks, but now it's unclear. If that's still the case, the Dolphins also have been using Bobby McCain at safety, and they have last year's first-round pick Mika Fitzpatrick as well. McDonald originally entered the league as a third-round pick by the Rams in 2013. After spending the first 4 seasons with the Rams, the USC product signed with Miami. Alright, well, this probably should have happened a long time ago. This probably never, if you think about when TJ signed here, this probably should never have happened. This was always a mess. It never worked. Them both, Rashad and TJ playing at the same time on the same field. It never worked. It just didn't. And I remember when we signed him, because that's a word. Signed him, it was when Jarvis Landry's contract was up, and it was literally at the end of his career here in Miami, and then we ended up extending TJ McDonald, which was just the dumbest thing we could have done. We already had Rashad Jones. The reasoning behind it was, TJ's a big, fast guy, he can play free safety. It never, ever, 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 and I mean literally never, did that ever work. And that was one of the dumbest moves the Dolphins have ever made in their literally one of the dumbest moves. You have, one of the best receivers in franchise history, up for a contract, and then you go extension, and you go and sign TJ McDonald instead. So, to be honest with you, I felt like this probably should have happened a long time ago. Like I just said 2 seconds ago, but I'm going to repeat myself. It never really should have happened. They just play the same position. They're two similar players. I think Rashad's a better strong safety than TJ is. I think he's got better instincts and better ball skills. He's more of an athlete as well, I feel, and he's a better tackler in the open field. And he's a better cover safety. He's just a better all-around player, and they play the same position. This doesn't really affect the team that much, in my opinion. Unless, we always wanted TJ to play linebacker because he was literally a player in no man's land. Like, no one really knew what to do with him. And, he never really played. What he does best is when he's in the box. But, the experiment never worked. It never made sense. It goes to show you how dumb our front office was with Mike Tannenbaum making decisions, for God's sakes. Which, that also never should have happened, by the way. One of the worst front office, literally up there with Jeff Ireland and Dennis Hickey, as one of the worst, stints as a Dolphins decision maker in the history of the franchise, for God's sakes. Do you remember when, and before we move on, speaking of Mike Tannenbaum, do you remember when Mike Tannenbaum literally said this, that when Lamar Miller and Olivier Vernon left, he was like, it's like they're graduating to the pros. I almost lost my mind, dude. We're not a college crapping football team, dude. We don't develop talent and then let them lead. Like, what the heck does that mean? I'll never forget that, dude. That was one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. Alright, so let's move on to the next news story. This hopefully will cheer you guys up a little bit. This is a little bit of hype news. This comes from Bleacher Report. The Miami Dolphins rumored to be pushing hard for Jadeveon Clowney. Last Friday night, a social media storm began to brew with the talk of the Miami Dolphins making a strong push for Houston Texans defensive end / linebacker Jadeveon Clowney. It is not a new rumor, but after Jay Glazer mentioned the Dolphins are being one of as many as 10 teams interested in the former first overall pick, things developed quickly. Let's see here. If there is one fact, it is that the Miami Dolphins need defensive pass rushing help. Sure, Charles Harris has looked better this preseason than any other season, but does anyone want to put their trust in him. Probably not quite yet. The facts, however, might just end there. So yeah, I mean, this is a heavily. I mean, he literally said there's also 10 other teams. It's very odd. It's weird that he's named us though out of the 10 teams. He's like, yeah, there's the Dolphins and 10 teams. It's like, what are you talking? Like, why would you say the Dolphins? Very odd. It's very odd, but obviously, if Jadeveon Clowney was a Dolphin, that would be amazing. But probably won't happen. You know, it's rumored that the Texans are looking for a number 2 receiver to pair with DeAndre Hopkins. You know, so Kenny Stills maybe. You know, I could see that not happening for off the field issues though, of them not wanting to take a player like that on. With their situation and where they play football, I feel like that probably won't go down very well. So I don't know if that would happen. I don't know if they would be willing to take a controversial player, I guess, which it's kind of stupid to say that about Kenny Stills, on. So yeah, that's the only reason I wouldn't see that happening. But it would be a good trade. Maybe you trade Kenny Stills in a 4th or a 5th round pick, and you get Jadeveon Clowney. You would have a lot of leverage in this situation because he hasn't signed a long-term deal yet. You know, he's coming up, you know, off of his rookie deal, and he needs to be paid. So it probably would be a situation where Clowney would either get to pick where he plays, or the Texans, you know, force him to, you know, trade him without a deal or a long-term deal if another team is willing to do that, which I highly doubt. So that's a very tricky situation in terms of realistically would it make sense for the Dolphins to do it? In a sense, yes. You know, they need a second receiver. They want a second receiver. We have a lot of receivers on this team. I would say that the only one that I would be willing to trade, though, would be Kenny Stills, because I'm not trading Preston Williams. Maybe I would trade Devontae Parker. That's another one that could be realistic, but we just extended Devontae Parker, so I don't think that's going to happen. But in terms of, is this realistic? Could the Dolphins actually obtain Jadeveon Clowney? Yes, I do think it's realistic because of the draft capital we have and because of their need of receivers and the cap space that we have. I feel like it's very realistic that Clowney could be a Dolphin. I think so. So, unless he just doesn't want to play here, and then you know, then we have no choice, or the Texans have full control over the situation. Who knows? That might be it for news, ladies and gentlemen. Let me see if there's anything I missed. No, I feel like we've covered most of the news. In terms of, you know, anything related to the Dolphins, obviously Andrew Luck retired, which is very sad and unfortunate that has happened. Very unfortunate that the Colts fans booed him as well. Like, that's very, very selfish of them. And very, very, very just dark. Just like, I don't want to stay too much on this, but we all know why they were booing, because they're not going to win as many games this year. It's like, all right, dude. You know, he played here for 7 years, and he was a great quarterback, and the man literally said he can't play anymore because, you know, he's in a lot of pain, and you're going to boo the man. But why Colts fans suck. Anyway, let's move on to what I thought about the preseason game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, this game was a very big deal for many different reasons. Obviously, this is the dress rehearsal. This is the dress rehearsal, if I could say that, you know, rehearsal. You know what I'm trying to say here. Anyway, it's the game that we're all getting ready. You're going to see a lot of your starters. We've seen a lot of the starters anyway. But usually this is the game that you really get to see the starters for a long period of time. It's a big deal because of the quarterback competition that's going on. You know, we don't know who's going to win it currently. And this was thought to be the game that may, if I could speak in, it might separate the two from each other. So yeah, let's start with the offense. Let's start with the starting offense. Against the Jaguars defense, you know, there was a lot of, it could have been better than it was. I feel like there was a lot of missed opportunities, whether it be penalties or missed throws. Like the one to Preston Williams that should have been a touchdown, and it was underthrown, and actually just poorly thrown, not just underthrown. Was very unfortunate that we could not hook up on that pass. The offensive line against the Jaguars. Let's start there. I want to narrow this down as much as I can. So our offensive line versus their defensive line. And I don't think Laramie played that much, if at all, actually. I can't really... I would have to go back and watch the game. I only watched it one time. But if he did, he didn't play that much. But what I thought about the offensive line was very bad in terms of run blocking, like abysmally bad. It was very, 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 very bad. We just, it looked like the offensive line last year. Granted, this is one of the better D-lines in the National Football League. So take that with a grain of salt. They do that to everybody, and they even did it last year. It's just their offense was so dang terrible. They constantly were turning the ball over that, it just didn't work out. But they were doing that stuff last year to everybody, so it doesn't really surprise me that the Jaguars' defensive line looked like that. So it could either be two things. It could just be that their defensive line is that good, and it's one of the best, if not the best in the league, or that the offensive line is just that bad. And hopefully it's just the Jaguars are that good. But in terms of individual performances, I thought the offensive lineman that had the worst night, which really surprised me, was Jesse Davis. I thought that he's had a very solid career, really, ever since he's played right tackle. He's always done very well, but the rookie Josh Allen just tore him up. One of the worst performances, no, that was definitely the worst performance I've ever seen by him as an individual player. He just had a terrible game in pass protection against Josh Allen. Now, Josh Allen is a very talented player. Very talented. Josh Allen was my number one player. If you've been listening to the show since before the draft, when I was covering the draft and all the quarterbacks and all the prospects, he was the best player, in my opinion, of that draft. So it did not surprise me that he looked that good. But Jesse Davis just played terrible, man. He just did not have a good game. I thought the interior of the offensive line was good at times, and just it wasn't physical enough against the run. Really all night, from the starters all the way across the board. I should never really use the word good. It was not good. It wasn't good enough, and there were times where we popped runs, but it was just super inconsistent. And when it wasn't there, it wasn't like we weren't gaining 0 yards. We were getting hit in the backfield. So it was not very good, really all night, and that just has to get better. So yeah, the offensive line continues to struggle. They had a good day or good game last week, I feel like, especially the guards. And I think they're getting better. And I don't think the guards played all that bad, especially in pass protection. I thought they did the guards did a really good job in pass protection. Every time Josh Allen got around the edge, really every single time, our quarterbacks were able to step up into the pocket. So they didn't do that bad in pass pro. They actually did pretty decent, especially when going against like Calais Campbell, and some of the players that they have, and Taven Bryan and some of those players. Like, they did a good job. So there were bright spots. I just thought, overall it just wasn't all that great. Receivers, there's really nothing to write home about in terms of receiving. Preston Williams had the one opportunity. It was just a bad throw. I thought Mike Gesicki finally got his opportunities in this game, and he made the most of it. He had 2 big catches in this game. It's good to see him get involved in the offense. Receivers-wise, Isaiah Ford had a good day. He got the deep pass off. Good job by him to keep working on that play and to get open for his quarterback, and he did a good job of not giving up on the play and then making the play after the ball came out of Josh Rosen's hands. So, him and Mike had probably the best day in terms of receiving. Running back-wise, I feel like Mark Walton is probably going to be the odd man out when it comes to people who are making this roster. He shows way too much hesitation in the backfield. Now, granted, there were plays where it really was nothing there. But he did a terrible job of following his blocks on a lot of those plays. there were creases. He never, it was very odd. Like he never, it seemed like he was running the wrong way on the play a lot of the time. It was very weird. It was like the fullback was going one way, and the entire play had the flow of going where the fullback was going, and Mark Walton just wasn't. I don't know. It was very odd, some of those decisions he made in terms of running the football. So I didn't think he had a particularly good night. He caught a touchdown pass on a basically just an all-out blitz on a zero-man look, and I'll say this again, like that, anybody who has hands could have done that. It really doesn't take any skill. One thing I will say about Mark Walton that's positive, he's very smooth in the receiving part of the game. Like he's got great hands, he runs good routes. That's really the only positives, really, compared to the other running backs that I've seen from Mark. Patrick Laird, I hope that's how you say his name, had another really solid night. I feel like this was his best game. He had a lot of really solid runs that were just on him. The touchdown that he had, that was all him. That was all effort. There was a lot more. I'm just out of my mind right now. I apologize. A lot more plays where he made the play himself in terms of, there's a good explosion, good vision. It wasn't really like some of the plays that he made before where I feel like anybody could have made that play. I thought a lot of the plays that he made against Jacksonville were just him being a talented player. So I think Patrick definitely needs to make the roster, especially as a special teams player, but as a running back as well. I think him and Myles Gaskin are clearly better than Mark Walton, and it would be nice to keep them both, but we'll see. I thought Myles Gaskin continues to look good. He should have had a long touchdown run, but he accidentally tripped. It sucks. But sometimes that happens. I feel like he shows great vision. He's really hard to tackle for a smaller guy. He's a very physical runner, and he's got a lot of explosion, and he's really good in the passing game. So he needs to make the roster as well. I feel like you can't. It would suck to lose one of the two. So to keep them both would be great, but we'll see what happens, what decisions the Dolphins make. But I feel like they both have had stellar preseasons so far. So yeah, that's really it for the offense, I feel like. And we'll talk about the quarterbacks, then we'll move on to the defense. We'll start with Ryan Fitzpatrick. This was the first game Ryan really had a fair shake. He didn't get a fair shake the last two games. He didn't get a lot of playing time, and the offensive line was just not there. And this game, he got a lot of playing time. He got pretty much, he got to play in all three quarters this game. He got the first, second, and third. He played in all three of those quarters. And I felt like he really didn't make the most of his opportunity. If he would have made the throw, to Preston Williams, those are the kind of throws you need to make in a competition like this. Those are the kind of plays you need to make, especially how much of a layup that was. And for him to miss it that badly is just, I don't know. I felt like that we need to dock him some points for that. So yeah, that was really the only bad play of the night, really, because most of the time, I feel like he made the right play when he was getting pressure. He did a good job avoiding it and getting the ball out of his hands. So, really, other than that missed throw, I really don't have any gripes with Ryan Fitzpatrick. His ball placement is clearly not as good as Josh Rosen's, though. I feel like Josh does a better job of fitting balls into tighter windows than Ryan does. I just feel that way. I feel like if Josh was in the game, he would have 1,000% hit Preston Williams on that play. I feel like there were some out routes Ryan Fitzpatrick could have hit that he missed. And those are some of the plays that I feel like Josh does a better job of. He's got a stronger arm. I think his ball placement is just a little bit better. So overall, I felt like it was all right. It was an all right performance. I like how Ryan, you can really see how he's played the game, he's played the position for a very long time. Like a very long time. Because he does a great job of recognizing when the play is over and doing everything he can to get you out of the bad play and not make the bad decision. I feel like he does a good job of that, and he has done a good job of that in preseason so far. So that's the biggest compliment I can give to Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now, Josh Rosen, I feel like, had just an overall better day. He showed us what he could do in this offense. First of all, I feel like his skill set fits this offense a lot more than Ryan Fitzpatrick. The quick passing game, you need a lot of accuracy, quick decision-making, and good ball placement. And I feel like, Josh has, he's got a quicker release. I feel like all of those things will allow him to be very successful in this offense. I might have had the volume up way too loud this entire time. I apologize for that. So yeah, in terms of his performance, I thought it was the best performance he's had all year, or all preseason. The play that he made where he hit Isaiah Ford on that pass, for many different reasons, was a stellar play. It was just a great play. He showed great pocket presence right there. He always has his eyes downfield. He's never shaken. He's never looking at the rush. He's always has his eyes downfield, and he made just a great throw on the run, just on the money, perfect pass. It was the drive started on the 1 yard line, and throughout the drive there were 3rd and longs where at one point there was a 3rd and 14 where he picked it up with his legs. I don't care who what competition you're playing against. To make all plays like that on 3rd down consistently, especially when you're backed up on your 1 yard line, is very impressive. He did a great. His ball placement is crazy. Like some of those bootlegs that we ran on that drive, he had pressure literally right in his face. Manages to get by enough time to throw perfectly with the guy right in his face. It's not a defensive end either. It was a defensive back. So you can only imagine how fast of a play. It's bang, bang, bang. You fake the handoff. You're bootlegging, and the guy's right in your face. You make a great read and put the ball right where it needs to be. I just thought he throughout the night really showed his potential and how good he can or will be, in my opinion. So yeah, I still feel like Josh. If you look at the preseason, Josh has played better than Ryan Fitzpatrick. The one thing I will say about Josh is, his. Now, I don't know what it was. Like, it could be a lot of different things. But one thing I have noticed throughout preseason is his consistency in terms of accuracy sometimes can be a little off. Like, he missed the throw to Clive Walford. That should have been a layup. And he missed them. He's done that a couple times throughout preseason. I don't know if it's nerves or I don't know really what it is, because his ball placement is insane. You see, when I say, like, especially and with Ryan Fitzpatrick on one missed throw, and same thing with Josh Rosen, it was one missed throw. Even Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and the great quarterbacks miss throws every once in a while. So it's not like it could be just that. But yeah, in terms of negatives, that's the only one I could really come up with. He missed one throw to Clive Walford. But overall, I feel like he played better and looked better. So let's move on to the defense. Defensively, the one thing that I will say about this defense, I feel like defensively, I feel like we've been amazing throughout preseason. Like, literally, just absolutely, positively, and just fantastic. The entire defense looks faster. It looks more disciplined. It just looks better. Like, the play calling's better. The 3rd down defense is way better. Like, our personnel choices are better. Everything's just better. It's just better. The Jaguars would not have scored a touchdown if it wasn't for a penalty flag. And to be honest with you, I felt like that flag was bang bang anyway. It was 50-50. The ball was underthrown. The guy tried to come back to the ball, and Eric Rowe was standing right there trying to play the ball too. So I don't really think that was pass interference. I just feel like that was pretty much just a bang bang play, tangled up situation. I just feel like the defense continues to show its potential and how much better it looks than last year. Like, it didn't have to do much to look better than last year, but it looks really good. Like, the defense as a unit looks really, 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 really good. And if you think about the personnel that's out there, it's hard to pass the ball on this team. There's a lot of speed. There's a lot of really, really, really good coverage guys, even at the linebacker units. Like Sam McGuavin, that's the best thing he had done up until this point is coverage, and he's done a great job in the tackle box too. Like, he's a fast, athletic guy. Same thing with Jerome Baker. The defense looks very, 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 very good. I've said that a million times. I just love the way they looked against Jacksonville all night. Really, we only gave up 7 in the drive would not have continued if it wasn't for a penalty flag. So I'm very happy with the defense. Very, very happy. In terms of some negatives, I thought Eric Rowe is very inconsistent. He gave up some passes that you would like to see him make plays on. A lot of them are he just needs to get his head around. Like he's in good position, but he's got his back turned to the ball and he just never gets his head around. And he needs to work on that. Like even the penalty flag, it shouldn't have looked as bad as it did. Even though to be honest with you, I don't think it was pass interference. He just needs to get his head around, play the ball, and he probably would have had 2 interceptions. He's just very inconsistent at times, but other than that, I really liked how Charles Harris played. I feel like he is looks more explosive, he just looks like a better player. Nate Orchard continues. I think he has 4 sacks on the so far this preseason. He continues to look very good. I thought Christian Wilkins had a solid game. Looks solid. Jerome Baker continues to look amazing. Sam McGuavin continues to look amazing. The defense as a unit looks really good. It really does. And that's without Rashad Jones out there. You know what I mean? So, Minka continues to look very good as well. He had that nice hit over the middle. And that's not really surprising. Minka's just a very good player. So, yeah, the defense as a whole is it's legit going to be a very good unit. I really do believe that. And if you add, let's say we do get Jadeveon Clowney to that defense, it's going to be it's going to be a really good defense. I'll just put it that way. It really is. If just matchup wise, it's a matchup nightmare to go against any team. We run a man-to-man defense, and we have literally across the board very good personnel to run that defense. Very, very good. A lot of athletic, great cover guys. You think, Minka Fitzpatrick, Bobby McCain at free safety, who's a great cover guy. Rashad Jones when he comes back, athletic, plays the ball very well. Xavier Howard, one of the best cornerbacks in the league. Eric Rowe, who's a decent too. That Jerome Baker, who's a great coverage linebacker. Sam McGuavin, everything that he's shown preseason so far, he's been a great cover. The matchups, especially on base downs, it's very tough to pass the ball on this defense. And if Sam can continue to play like he has, the run defense is going to be crazy too. So, yeah, the defense just continues to look, again, fast, smart. I almost said disciplined, but I stopped myself. Fast, smart. The scheme looks really good. I'm very, very excited for what this defense can do. And we haven't seen any pressure looks for the most part. And I know Brian Flores has some in there because of how that defense was ran with New England. And don't forget, Patrick Graham comes from the same system. Even though he spent a year in Green Bay, he comes from the same coaching staff that Brian Flores grew up in. So it's going to be the same. And I'm very excited to see what this defense can do because I think it's going to be a fun, very fun unit to watch. And I've said this many times on all of the podcasts. The thing that you have to run this defense at a high level is a good secondary because their third down numbers are key to this defense. And you don't have to have great defensive ends because of the pressure looks that, especially with Brian Flores as the coach, and what they do in New England, is they just have a lot of, good cover guys, and they keep a lot of DBs on the roster for a good reason. That's why the third down numbers are so high. It's because the matchups are so tough. When you look across the board, it's all these guys can cover. None of them can't. And that's a luxury we have here. And I feel like to make that defense click, you have to have people who can cover, and we have a lot of people who can cover. And I feel like that's why you're seeing this defense look as good as it has throughout preseason. So I'm very excited to see what they can do when the regular season starts. So guys, we do not have a clip of the week, unfortunately. Just don't got one. I was thinking maybe we would play a clip from Luck's retirement press conference, but that's not Dolphins related, so yeah, we just don't have a Dolphins clip of the week, unfortunately. So yeah, let's get into the Dolphins fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. And thank you guys for your continued support, for sure. The last 2 videos have done very well in terms of really like to dislike ratio and views, so that's good. This first question comes from Tree double triple 01. He says or asks, excuse me, I just hit my mic. He says, "Good catch by Gesicki. What happened to him though? Is he injured or did he get the wind knocked out of him?" No, he's fine. I think I'm pretty sure he came back in that game. Yeah, he's fine. This question comes from Edward. He says, "Stag, I want to know, do Josh Rosen have a pocket presence? What do you think about it? Does he have pocket presence? Yeah, he's got really good pocket presence. He showed that against Jacksonville. I mean, he showed it really all night. I mean, he had multiple times where he had to escape pressure, and every single time he did, he got a positive play out of it. So, yeah, he's got very, very good pocket presence." This next question comes from SM. SM asks, "From what you can tell thus far, who is going to start across from Xavier Howard and across from Charles Harris? Also, give me the week 1 outside wide receivers." Okay, so we'll start with if I can talk. I think Eric Rowe will start for sure. Who is going to start across from Charles Harris? Probably Tank. I would say would be one of the ends that starts. Yeah, I would say Tank. In terms of outside receivers, I think your outside receivers will probably be, and Kenny Stills has been playing a lot in the slot. Probably Devontae Parker. I want to say Preston Williams, but I'm not sure. I would say probably Devontae Parker and a mixture of Kenny Stills and Jakeem Grant. So yeah, there you go. This next question comes from SM. SM asks, "Rosen sits behind Fitzpatrick, Tua sits behind Rosen. By 2021, the O-line is a beast, and the Finns have a top 5 offense. Is that what we are looking at here?" No. No, I don't think so. I don't think, if I had to, and I'm being honest, if I had to really think, I don't think the Dolphins will, and I'm going to say it, I don't think the Dolphins are drafting a quarterback next year. I really don't. I think this season, and if this defense can continue to play like they've looked against some of the starters of opposing teams, then this team is going to be a better team than everybody thinks. You can't have that good of a defense and be a bad football team. It just doesn't happen. So, I think Josh Rosen, and I've said this before, I believe in Josh Rosen. I think he is a franchise quarterback, and I will continue. And I said that, listen, dude, before Josh Rosen was a Dolphin, I've said that about Josh Rosen. So it's not because he's a Dolphin. It's because I actually do believe that. So, yeah, I don't think that's what we're looking at. Maybe, Josh Rosen's the starter next year, and hopefully the offensive line plays good enough where we're not going to have to drastically change it. This next question comes from SM. SM asks, "Everyone is concerned that if the O-line continues to struggle and the Dolphins start Rosen week 1, that he will get killed out there and his confidence will suffer." Thoughts? Yeah, I don't really understand this whole thing. I really don't understand it. I think maybe, I don't think, when you look at the busts in NFL history, when you look at young players, people use David Carr as an example of his confidence just was, never repaired because of how bad the Texans were early on in that franchise's history. But there have been other players like Peyton Manning, like Troy Aikman, that have played on very bad teams and then became Hall of Fame players. Like Derek Carr did it. He is then went on to almost win the MVP if he didn't break his leg. I think there was more examples of quarterbacks playing on bad teams and bad offensive lines, and then down the line being good players than there's not, in my opinion. You look at, there have been quarterbacks that have sat behind people and just have either never come in, or just when they have came in, they just haven't done anything. I don't think there's a set way to do it. I really don't. There's just not. Troy Aikman played in the 80s, and he played on a terrible team. I think they won 1 game that year, or maybe it was 2. and he had to play the Eagles twice a year, and that with Reggie White, Jerome, and all those people. So, and he got hit every damn game, like really bad. I mean, that's before we had all these, rules of hitting the quarterback. So, I don't know. I feel like that you could really, it's very contradictory because very hypocritical too on some of the some of the analysts. Like one of the ones that I've noticed, even Chris Sims, who I love that show. I think it's probably the best sports show, especially for football, is the Chris Sims podcast. But even he contradicts himself when it comes to this. Like, he'll say you should sit a quarterback, and then he'll say the best thing for a quarterback is to, even if it is a bad team, to start him an entire year. Like, there's really no set thing. I really don't have an opinion on it, because it's depending on the person. It's depending on the player and the person. I don't know. I don't know how Josh Rosen would react to something like that. And hopefully the offensive line is better, as a unit when they start together. I really do hope that. And, the guards have gotten a lot of playing time. I feel like their pass protection is the best thing that they've done on all of preseason. So that's a good thing. This next question comes from Tree0001. He says, if young Danny the Manning Marino were out there at quarterback this year with this team, what would our record be? That's a great question. Dan did a great job of getting the ball out of his hands quick, and especially in this offense where you have to do that and make great reads. And he's also, had great pocket presence, and he can stretch the field like no other quarterback with his arm and his accuracy. So I don't know what our record would be, but we'd be a pretty dang good football team. I can tell you that right now. With all the the talent that we have at receiver. I think he would be able, if the offensive line is not great, I feel like he would be able to counter that with his pocket presence, and he had a very underrated pocket presence, and his ability to get the ball out of his hands quick. This next question comes from TR3MC. He says, hey Skaggs, did Rosen just overtake the starting position in a little over one quarter? I think he did, and I've said this since the man got here that he should be the starter, and not because of the whole, you got to see what you got in Josh Rosen, because I just think he's the better player, and I think he's shown that. This next question comes from Will. Will asks, if you had to project one player to have a breakout season for us on defense, Baker and Minka, or maybe even Bobby at safety. I feel like Minka, I don't understand the breakout thing. He had a great rookie year. So I think he's already arrived as a very good player. Jerome Baker, I feel like, is an easy one, so I'm not going to say that. And Bobby at safety, I mean, Bobby has been a pretty dang good player. That's why we gave him that contract extension. He is playing at a new position, but if I had to pick someone other than those players, I would probably say Sam McGlavin. I would say is going to have a breakout year. This next question comes from PolyKing305. He says DJ Khaled voice. Another one. I think I can't. I'm not going to do a DJ Khaled voice, ladies and gentlemen. I don't even know how I just can't do it. Just can't do it. I really think about, he says, another one, I really think out fullback, Chandler Cox. I got these flies attacking me. God dang it, man. Stupid flies. Redoing this question. This comes from PolyKing305. He asks, I really think fullback Chandler Cox is surprising me. Do you think he could be an X factor in some games? Yeah, he's done amazing, man. He's looked, he's athletic. Can get around the edge. When he gets there, he makes the blocks. He's a very good fullback. This next question comes from Ethan Howard. He says, hey, Skaggs. As I was watching us win a game while listening to the commentators talk about how bad we are, it got me wondering, who are your least favorite game commentators? Oh, man. Yeah, I feel like they really were just reading a script from what everybody has repeated about this team over and over again. even before we fired Adam Gase. I mean, everybody's been saying the same thing about this team without even really watching the team. So, I love when we were locking the Jaguars up. The commentator was like how bad the Jaguars. It was the Jaguars' fault that they weren't moving the ball. It wasn't us. We didn't get any compliments for playing good defense all day because we were expected to be bad, and that's fine. It is what it is. It's terrible. But my least favorite commentators in terms of football are the Monday Night Football crew. I think they're terrible. It sucks. It sucks. A close second and almost tied is Rich Gannon. I don't understand why he talks like that. It's so over the top. It's almost like a cartoon character. And it creeps me out. I don't understand why he talks like that. Because I know for sure if he was at Starbucks, he's not going to use that voice. And it just makes me upset. Yes, those are my least favorite commentators. This next question comes from Will. He says, we've been getting good production out of the tight ends. Who do you think is making the final 53 at the position? Tight end? Durham Smythe, Mike Gesicki, Nick O'Leary. I think it's probably it. And if you want to keep 4, I guess Clive. This next question comes from Will. Will asks, "What did you think about the flashes Gesicki has made in the game in this game and throughout the preseason?" I think, to be honest, there was a lot of times where he probably should have gotten the ball and he didn't, especially against the Buccaneers. And he finally got the ball against Jacksonville, and he needs to continue to get targets. Even if he's covered one-on-one, he has the ability to come down with the ball, and that's what makes him so special. So hopefully we continue to see that, and yeah, I think he's looking good. This next question comes from Take Me Out. He says, O-line is very concerning. I can't remember ever seeing a line quite like this that is unable to run block or pass protect. I think the guards are trending in the right direction when it comes to pass protection. So that's a good thing. The fact that you said I can name an offensive line that was just as bad. I would say the 2013 offensive line was really bad. With Billy Turner and Dallas Thomas, I feel like that's probably the worst offensive line that I've seen in quite a long time. This next question comes from Pulley King. He says, do you think Preston is what, as of now, Parker was supposed to be? I think Preston Williams is what Devontae Parker was? But we'll have to see, man. Regular season hasn't started yet. Preseason, it's preseason. I want to continue to see if he can continue play consistently. He did burn Jalen Ramsey, the perceived best corner in the league, and he should have had a long touchdown, but it is what it is. This next question comes from Take Me Out. He says, hi, Skaggs. I am so pleased with Josh Rosen, and it's looking more Marizo that he is more so that he's in our future. At this point, I don't see any reason to chase another quarterback in next year's draft. I guess time will tell. Yeah, time will tell. And the reason I said Marizo, just so the court knows, I thought it was a play on a Marino thing. Yeah, I agree with you, man. I completely agree. This next question comes from Wayne Tillman. He says, I think Rosen should be named the starting quarterback this weekend. Yeah, I think we all should. And it's not because we need to see what he has. It's because he's the better quarterback. I'm sick and tired of hearing that. And people who don't know what they're talking about, oh, the fact that he hasn't beat Ryan Fitzpatrick in camp yet means he's not. Dude, have you watched the preseason games? Listen, if Josh Rosen was in the game and Preston Williams runs the same route, Preston Williams is going to get the football. I can guarantee you that. So, you are getting more quality playing time if Josh Rosen is starting, in my opinion. This next question comes from Julian. He says, asks, I don't understand Flores' beef with Rosen because he's, quote, just not ready. But he has guys like Minka at strong safety and McCain at free safety, which are not their natural positions. Not to mention Calhoun and Dieter are the starting linemen when they are rookies. Is there something I'm not seeing here with Rosen because he's been playing amazing this preseason? Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers, who also went to UCLA, has had the same demeanor as Rosen, but no one says anything because he's good. But Rosen needs to change his body language. What gives Skaggs? Please help me understand this feud. I don't think there's a feud going on. I think that's just good coaching. He also criticized his failure to step up into the pocket at times, and in the next game, you see improvement on that. You see him to stepping up into the pocket, helping out his tackles a lot more than he did the game before. So, I think that's just coaching. I don't think that's coaching at its finest, in my opinion. You point out something that you want to see in a player improve on, and they improve on it instead of just letting it go. And I thought we have seen better body language from Josh Rosen. And people handle adversity differently. That doesn't mean they don't care. Some people are quiet. Some people are very vocal when things go wrong or things go great. It depends on the person. This is another one of those situations when it comes to quarterbacks where it's very hypocritical and a lot of people contradict themselves. When people talk about Eli Manning and how he's so one note, one tone. He's never too high, never too low. He's perfect for New York. But then you talk about someone like Jay Cutler or Josh Rosen, and they need to show more emotion. They need to be. It's very stupid, and it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, it's one of those things that it's one of those things when you have someone on a show or something like that. And like TV analysts, they'll just talk about and they give you these dumb analogies like, oh, it's like when you go to McDonald's and you have $1, they do one of those, or you're fishing at a pond, and it's one of those stupid things. Like it doesn't make any sense. I don't think there's a feud. I don't think there's any dislike there. I think it's just good coaching, in my opinion. And the whole body language thing, I think, is important to a certain extent. I do think you would like to see a Brett Favre type deal where you're always celebrating with your teammates. When things go wrong, I don't really know what you would want there. Would you want your quarterback to be quiet? Would you want him to yell and scream? I really don't know what you would want there. Drew Brees is very quiet when things go wrong. Tom Brady isn't. Aaron Rodgers is very quiet when things go wrong. Like there's not one, and all of those guys are very successful. So there's not one, like I said, there's not like one set rule thing. That might be the last question of the day. This next question comes from, let's see if we can answer two questions really quick. Tree0001, he says, do you like movies much? Have you seen the new Tarantino directed cinematic motion picture, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? If so, yeah, I do. I like movies a lot, and I haven't seen that yet, but I'm a huge Quentin Tarantino fan. This question comes from Tech Me Out. He says, if we had to cut a back, I think that Walton has to be the odd man out. Laird and Gaskin, I think, have better vision, better patience. They wait for the blocking to set up. They're always following forward and rarely losing yardage and just run far better between the tackles. Your thoughts? I could not agree more. I think Mark has to be the odd man out. And I think we're actually going to do all the questions. Let's try to do this really, really fast. This last question comes from Kevin. Kevin says, okay, so this is a long one. So you were right and I was wrong. It happens, and I wouldn't continue listening to you if you didn't know what you're talking about. I claimed we might have less protect problems than expected to tight end depth in a fullback and using specific formations to support the O-line. That said, if you could trade Parker, Stills, Drake, and McMillan and land an above-average tackle and guard, who would you do it? I was anti-trade on Drake and Stills, but now I've become extremely impressed by Patrick Laird and Sam Aguavin. I think Isaiah Ford is good enough. Well, what do you think? Sorry, my questions are so long. I put a lot of thought into the Fins, and I like to hear feedback on it. Would be so much easier if you had like a call and radio segment. Yeah, I'm not a technologically, as you can hear that I can't speak English. I'm not very technological, whatever. Yeah, I could see I would be okay with maybe Stills for an above average tackle. It's a great question, but yeah, maybe like Kenny Stills. Not Kenyon Drake though. I think he's too valuable. He's a very special player and he fits this offense perfectly. So that's gonna be it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. I am Skyx1383, and I'll see you guys in the next one.